Get someone else. The words didn't just echo. They sliced through the military hospital room like a blade. Every monitor, every quiet footstep, every whispered medical instruction seemed to freeze in place. Marine Commander Richard Hale, a man known for commanding battlefields without hesitation, now lay stiff against crisp, white hospital sheets. His right arm was secured in a brace. Fresh bandages wrapped around his ribs. A faint cut traced the edge of his forehead, barely hidden beneath graying hair. He had survived roadside bombs, ambushes, 2 overseas deployments. But today it was a training accident that put him here. And somehow, that seemed to bother him more than the injuries. Standing at the foot of his bed was Lieutenant Marcus Reed. Calm, composed, professional. His uniform was pressed perfectly, his posture steady, his voice measured as he reviewed the commander's chart on a tablet. "Vitals are stable, sir," Marcus said respectfully. "We'll adjust your pain management and monitor the rib fractures closely." That's when Hale looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted. "I said get someone else," Hale repeated, slower this time. Firmer. His jaw tightened as if he were issuing a battlefield command. The heart monitor beeped steadily in the silence that followed. A young corpsman near the doorway glanced at the attending physician. The physician cleared his throat, unsure how to respond. "Commander," the doctor began cautiously, "Lieutenant Reed is the senior trauma nurse on duty. He's more than qualified." "I don't care," Hale interrupted sharply. "Find someone else." The air in the room grew heavy. No one said the reason out loud. They didn't have to. It wasn't about credentials. It wasn't about experience. It wasn't about competence. Marcus had seen that look before. The quick judgment, the dismissal before a single mistake was made. He had learned, over years of service, how to keep his expression neutral, how to let disrespect roll past him without reaction, how to remain the professional no matter what. Still, something about this moment felt heavier. Maybe it was the medals displayed in a neat case on the side table, symbols of honor and sacrifice. Maybe it was the irony, or maybe it was the simple fact that he had once risked everything for men wearing the same uniform, now turning him away. Marcus inhaled slowly. "Sir," he said evenly, meeting Hale's eyes without challenge, "your injuries require consistent monitoring. I assure you, you're in capable hands." Hale's stare hardened. "I didn't question your hands," he replied coldly. "I said I don't want you." The words landed harder this time. A nurse near the back shifted uncomfortably. The doctor stepped forward again, tension clear on his face. But Marcus gently raised a hand, signaling it was fine. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shaken. But deep beneath the calm exterior, something stirred, a memory trying to surface. The commander's name, the service record, the deployment history flashing briefly on the tablet screen. Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2nd Battalion. Marcus felt his pulse slow, because suddenly, this wasn't just another difficult patient. And today was not going to end the way Commander Hale expected. Lieutenant Marcus Reed had served 10 years in the Navy Medical Corps. 10 years of heat, dust, blood, and impossible decisions. He had worked in combat zones where helicopters landed under fire and seconds meant the difference between life and death. He had stabilized soldiers while explosions echoed in the distance. He had pressed his hands against wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, whispering steady words to men who were slipping away. He had watched fear in grown warriors' eyes and replaced it with hope. More than once, he had carried Marines twice his size across uneven ground, refusing to leave anyone behind. His uniform carried ribbons he rarely spoke about, commendations signed by officers who owed him their lives. Quiet respect followed him in every unit he served in. He wasn't just trusted, he was relied on. But none of that mattered in this moment, because as he stood beside the hospital bed, reviewing vitals and preparing the next round of treatment, Commander Richard Hale looked at him like he didn't belong there. "Sir," Marcus said evenly, professional as ever, "with respect, I'm the senior trauma nurse on duty. Your injuries require close monitoring. We need to adjust your medication to prevent complications." "I said I don't want you," Hale snapped. The words struck the air like a gunshot. The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, 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 almost too loud in the silence that followed. A junior nurse froze near the supply cart. The supervising physician stepped forward carefully. Commander, Lieutenant Reed, is fully qualified. He's one of our most experienced trauma specialists. I don't care, Hale interrupted sharply. His jaw flexed. Get someone else in here. The room grew heavy. Not chaotic, not loud, just thick, like the oxygen had been replaced with tension. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He had been in life-or-death situations where panic would have been easier than composure. He had treated men who cursed at him through pain. He had seen anger born from fear before. But this felt different. This wasn't fear. This was rejection. Marcus lowered his tablet slightly and looked at the commander, not as a patient, but as a Marine. He studied the man's face, the faint scar near his temple, the hardened posture even in pain. Then his eyes shifted to the digital chart glowing beside the bed. Name, Richard Hale. Age, 52. Service record, multiple deployments. His gaze moved down the screen. Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2nd Battalion. Something inside Marcus paused. Helmand, 2nd Battalion. For a brief second, the hospital room faded. The steady beep of the monitor blended into another sound. Distant rotor blades, shouting over radio static, the crack of rifle fire. He didn't move. He just stared at the words on the screen. The year listed under deployment made his chest tighten slightly. That year, that place. Marcus felt something stir, not anger, not bitterness. Recognition. He slowly lifted his eyes back to Commander Hale. This time, he wasn't seeing a man pushing him away. He was seeing a name from a battlefield long ago. Without speaking, Marcus set the tablet down on the bedside table. The room watched him carefully, unsure what he was about to do. Then, calmly, deliberately, he reached for the sleeve of his uniform and slowly rolled it up. The monitor beeped louder in the silence. Commander Hale's fingers tightened around the edge of the hospital bed. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor filled the room, mixing with the distant hum of hospital machinery. Outside the window, the world moved as usual. Cars passing, people walking, but inside that small room, time had shifted back 14 years. To Route Red, Hale finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. South of Sanjin. It was just after sunset. Hale's jaw clenched. The memory was coming back now. Not in pieces, but in full color. The convoy rolling out of FOB Jackson. The heat still rising from the dirt roads. The radio chatter. The way the air had felt too still. And then, the explosion. A flash so bright it swallowed the world. I remember the blast, Hale said slowly. The vehicle lifting. Then nothing. You were unconscious when we pulled you out, Marcus replied gently. Your door was jammed. Fire was spreading from the engine. Hale looked up sharply. You were the medic who dragged me? Marcus hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of humility. Yes, sir. The commander leaned back against his pillow as if the weight of that truth had pressed him there. I was told a medic got me out, Hale murmured. They said he didn't wait for clearance. Marcus allowed a faint smile. There wasn't time to wait. The monitor kept its steady rhythm. Hale studied Marcus's face again, but this time not like a stranger, like a man searching through old photographs. You stayed with me, Hale said, realization dawning. In a dust-off bird, I remember someone holding pressure on my side, telling me to stay awake. That was me, Marcus confirmed quietly. You kept trying to give orders. Avi Cliff escaped Hales lips. That sounds like me. For a moment, the tension that filled the room earlier was gone, replaced by something raw and human. Why didn't I ever meet you properly? Hale asked. You were evacuated to Germany within hours, Marcus explained. By the time he came back stateside, I was reassigned. Different units. Different missions. Hale's eyes dropped to the tattoo again. Helmand 2012, he read softly. We lost good men that year. Yes, sir, Marcus said. His voice carried the weight of names unspoken. We did. Silence returned, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was shared. Hale looked back at him, and whatever distance had existed between them before was gone. "You saved my life," the commander said plainly. Marcus shook his head. "We saved each other, sir. That's how it worked over there." Hale swallowed hard, emotion breaking through the disciplined exterior he had worn for decades. "All these years," he said, "I never knew the name of the man who pulled me from that vehicle." Marcus extended his hand. "Marcus Reed, sir." Hale gripped it firmly, not as a superior to a subordinate, but as one Marine to another. "Thank you, Marcus." The monitor continued its steady beeping, but now it no longer sounded sharp or lonely. It sounded like something else, like a second chance. It had been chaos, not the kind you see in movies. Real chaos. Dust swallowing the night sky. Smoke so thick it burned the lungs. Fire twisting metal into shadows that didn't look human anymore. Screams breaking through radio static. Commander Hale's convoy had been moving through a narrow stretch of road when the world exploded beneath them. The blast flipped the lead vehicle sideways. Shrapnel tore through steel. The shockwave knocked men off their feet. For a moment, there was only ringing. Then came the shouting. "IED! IED! Man down! Corpseman!" Marcus had been 24 years old, young enough to still feel fear in his chest like a drumbeat, old enough to run toward it anyway. He remembered sprinting through the dust, boots sinking into sand, heart pounding against his ribs. He remembered seeing the commander's vehicle crumpled like a crushed can. He remembered the flames. Someone yelled that the vehicle might ignite. Marcus didn't hesitate. He climbed through twisted metal, ignoring the heat licking at his sleeves. Commander Hale was trapped halfway between the seat and the shattered door. Blood soaked through his uniform. Shrapnel had torn into his side. His leg was pinned awkwardly beneath bent steel. And still, he was trying to move. "Don't worry about me," Hale had rasped. "Check my Marines." Even then, even bleeding out, he was thinking about his men. Marcus had grabbed him by the vest. "Sir, you're my Marine right now." Bullets cracked somewhere beyond the smoke. Distant, but close enough. Marcus remembered forcing the metal away, just enough to pull Hale free. Remembered dragging him across dirt mixed with oil and blood. Remembered pressing gauze hard against a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. His hands were shaking, but his voice wasn't. "You're not dying tonight, sir," Marcus had said firmly. And he meant it. Hale had drifted in and out of consciousness, eyes unfocused, breath shallow. "You tell my daughter," Hale had whispered weakly. "Tell her I'm proud of her." Marcus leaned closer, tightening the bandage. "You can tell her yourself," he replied. "Stay with me." Minutes felt like hours. Then, finally, the distant thump of helicopter blades. Evac birds cutting through the darkness. Relief didn't come in cheers. It came in exhaustion. Evacuation successful. Commandant Halis survived. 2 Marines did not. And like so many moments in war, the story moved forward. Reports were written. Medals were awarded. Units rotated home. Faces blurred. Names faded. Medics transferred quietly to the next assignment. Heroes were remembered. Those who kept them alive often were not. Back in the hospital room, the steady beep of the heart monitor pulled them both into the present. Commander Hale's voice trembled slightly. "That was you." There was no accusation now, only disbelief. "Yes, sir." Marcus didn't say it with pride. He didn't say it for recognition. He said it with simple truth. "You kept saying you had a daughter," Marcus added softly. "You told me to tell her you were proud of her in case you didn't make it." The commander's breathing slowed. His eyes closed, and the memory hit him fully this time. The darkness, the fear, the acceptance that it might be over. And then, a voice, calm, steady, refusing to let him slip away. When Hale opened his eyes again, the anger that had filled them earlier was gone. There was no hardness left, only realization, and something heavier than pride. Gratitude. The hospital room felt different now. Quieter, heavier, not with tension this time, but with understanding. Commander Richard Hale looked at Marcus Reed again. But this time, he wasn't seeing a uniform. He wasn't seeing rank. He wasn't seeing difference. He was seeing the man who had pulled him from a burning vehicle, the voice that had cut through chaos, the steady hands that refused to let him bleed out in the dark. Not a stranger, Not someone else, but a Marine who had carried him through fire. I don't remember everything from that night, Hale admitted, his voice lower now. Honest. But I remember someone wouldn't let me give up. Marcus gave a small nod. That was my job, sir. Hale shook his head slightly, almost to himself. No, he said. That was more than a job. The words lingered between them, because both men understood what that night had cost. There was a long pause, not uncomfortable, just real. Then, clearly and firmly, Commander Hale spoke the words that changed everything. Lieutenant Reed, I'd be honored if you continued my care. They weren't dramatic. They weren't loud, but they carried weight. The supervising doctor quietly stepped back, relief evident in his posture. The tension that had once filled the room dissolved completely. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation. He checked the 4-line, adjusted the monitor, reviewed the medication dosage. Professional, steady, focused, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But something had changed. Not in the chart, not in the treatment plan, in the air. Before Marcus stepped away, Hale spoke again. I owe you my life. This time there was no pride in his tone, no authority, just gratitude. Marcus paused and met his eyes. You don't owe me anything, sir, he replied calmly. We were Marines. We take care of our own. It wasn't a slogan. It wasn't a rehearsed line. It was truth. Hale nodded slowly. Yes, he said. We do. And for the first time since he had entered that hospital room, the commander truly understood what those words meant. Weeks later, when Commander Hale was discharged, his injuries healing and pride reshaped by reflection, he made a request. Not for a private acknowledgement, not for a quiet handshake. He requested that Lieutenant Marcus Reed be formally recognized for his actions in Helmand. Actions buried in reports, overlooked in rotation, never fully honored. A small ceremony was organized at the base auditorium. Nothing flashy, just officers, nurses, corpsmen, and Marines gathered together. Commander Hale stood at the podium, uniform pressed, medals polished. But his voice carried something deeper than authority. It carried humility. Courage, he began, scanning the room, doesn't always look the way you expect. The room fell silent. Sometimes it doesn't wear the rank you think it should. Sometimes it doesn't stand at the front of the formation. He paused, then continued. Sometimes it looks like the person standing quietly beside your hospital bed, even when you don't deserve it. Every eye shifted toward Marcus. Hale turned fully toward him. And sometimes, he said, voice firm but steady, the man you almost pushed away is the man who once carried you through hell. The room erupted in applause. Not polite applause, real applause. The kind that comes from recognition, from truth being spoken openly. It wasn't about rank. It wasn't about medals. It wasn't about who outranked whom. It was about respect, earned once in the fire of war, earned again in the quiet of a hospital room. And this time, it would never be forgotten.